Hey guys, let's talk about conclusions. A conclusion is an end, so the conclusion paragraph is the end of your paper. But do you know that saying, I've reached the conclusion that... Yeah, so a conclusion is the idea that is the result of your thinking process. So when I say that in your conclusion, I want to hear a new idea that you are leaving the reader with, that's what I mean. I mean that your paper should come to a new idea that you didn't have at the beginning of the paper. Ideally, but let's look at some of the ways that you can end the paper. You can echo the introduction. This is also called a hook and return conclusion. In this conclusion, you return to an image or analogy or story that you used in your introduction to open the topic to the reader. On Monday, we talked about introductions and that they are there to draw the reader in and grab the reader's interest. So the conclusion is there to satisfy their curiosity. And you create that full circle effect by returning to something that you mentioned in the introduction. So let's look at these examples. If the intro is, music has long been understood to be the key that fits into the tumblers of people's hearts and minds. Music has been used to woo, to mourn, and to celebrate. It is also an effective means to sway public opinion to enact social change. If that is the intro, the conclusion could be, when we hear Joan Baez's We Shall Overcome, Bob Marley's No Woman, No Cry, or Kanye West's Diamonds from Sierra Leone, we feel our connection to each other. These songs, and so many others like them, unlock the heart's chamber where our compassion resides. Do you see the echo? Do you see the hook and return? It is an image. The image is the key and the lock. So in the introduction, I say that music has been understood to be the key that fits into the tumblers of people's hearts and minds. If you play Elder Scrolls, you know that tumblers are inside locks. They are the things that you need to manipulate to unlock something. So I'm saying that music is the key that unlocks the heart and mind. I return to that idea in the final sentence of the conclusion, when I say that the songs and others like them unlock the heart's chamber where our compassion resides. So that is the echo. I am echoing that image. It's a really nice lyrical way to end a paper. Another way to end the paper is to look to the future. In this conclusion, you explain what action you want the reader to take after reading the essay. This might also state what you want the people who are the focus of your article to do. An example of this would be if you were writing a paper about the Wisconsin legislature, you might end by explaining to the public, the people who are reading the essay, the actions that you would like the legislature to take. So you are issuing a call to change or a call to action for the Wisconsin legislature, or a call to change to your audience. So here's an example. If you believe that the world is better off with these educational institutions that create green spaces of the mind and teach students to appreciate them and create their own, that constantly push the state of the arts, and that conduct research that supports the country, you should understand that the federal government makes these institutions possible. But it is up to the American people, through their votes and conversations with the legislators, to decide if we will maintain these critical powerhouses of American ingenuity. In this conclusion, I am telling the American people that they need to use their votes and speak to their legislators to continue to have the federal government support American institutions. So my call to action is to have people push for this federal support. The third of 4 conclusions that I'm going through is the conclusion that poses questions. When we talked about introductions, we talked about the interrogative introduction, the introduction that poses questions. That draws your reader into your argument. The conclusion that poses questions sends them away with questions. Because this conclusion, it stimulates the reader's thinking about the implications of your argument. So it makes the reader think about how what you've said affects their world. And this type of conclusion can also ask the reader to apply what you have argued to other situations. Let's look at this example. Now that I have explained the relevance of the honeybees to our ecosystem and why they are disappearing, ask yourself, what would you stand to lose if no bees entered your garden? If no bees visited the crops that feed us? And if the loss of the bees will cost us so much, what will we lose if we continue to drive other species toward extinction? So there, I'm asking the reader to think about how this argument about saving the honeybees affects them by asking the reader to think about how the absence of bees in their garden will affect their garden. And then I ask the reader to apply this knowledge to another situation, the loss of other species. So posing questions is a good way to send the reader away with more thoughts about what you have said. And finally, you can conclude with a quote. Do you remember how we talked about the appeal to ethos earlier in the semester? This is an appeal to ethos. Remember that the appeal to ethos is an appeal based on the credibility of the speaker. So by inserting a quote into your conclusion, you can add authority to your writing because you are borrowing the authority of the person who is speaking. So a quote can add authority or it can add poignancy to your argument. Poignancy is a sense of emotional weight. It is a sense of slight sorrow. When you use a quote, you need to provide context for it. You cannot simply tack a quote on to the end of your essay because a quote cannot speak for itself. You need to introduce the quote so the reader will understand who has said it, and then you need to place it in the context of your argument so the reader can understand why you are saying it. Here's an example. As many golfers and pool players have said, the more I practice, the luckier I get. Composition students just need to keep practicing. They may not feel like they are learning, but they will find that they just keep getting luckier and luckier with their grades. This quote does not add authority or poignancy. This is meant to be funny. The joke is that practicing makes you better at what it is that you are doing. The more I practice, the better swimmer I become. It isn't a matter of luck. So it's a joke, the idea that practicing will make you lucky. So I don't mind being that lighthearted in this conclusion. What I would like you composition students to think about with this quote is that as with golf, as with pool playing, as with swimming or dancing or playing a musical instrument, writing requires practice. So the more you write, the better your writing will become. That is the order of the universe. All right, so that concludes our conclusions. I would like you to try one of these conclusions in your exploratory paper and in your informative paper. These are not the only types of conclusions in the world. And your textbook in Chapter 12 talks about all of these elements of composition that we have discussed this week and last. So if you need some help, check out Chapter 12. Okay, thank you very much for sitting through this video, and email me if you have any questions. See you later.